guys, and welcome to success4.com. I'm here with Suzanne Eder for the 4th episode in our series. Suzanne, do you want to introduce the series and talk about what we're going to talk about today?
Absolutely. The series is called The Alchemy of Self Love, which is the foundation of my work. And my definition of self-love is recognizing, honoring, and celebrating the deepest truth of who we are. And so today we're talking about that honoring piece, one aspect of it, which is following our own inner guidance. Because, you know, we all have inner guidance, but many of us don't follow it for various reasons. And when we don't, then we're not really honoring the truth of who we are. So I wanted to talk a lot about inner guidance today.
Fantastic. Do you remember, let's go back to the first time that you can remember or recall hearing your inner guidance, or at least acknowledging it, knocking on the door and saying, hello, listen to me.
Oh gosh, there are so many. I'm not sure I could go to even know which the first one is. Well, see, here's the thing about inner guidance. It speaks to us through different channels. There is the one that you're, I think, alluding to, just an actual kind of the still small voice, here's what I want you to do or not do. There's that form, but there's also, that felt sense of, this isn't right, or yes, this is right. There's a felt sense. Our emotions are a huge aspect of our inner guidance system, which I think we'll talk about later. And also our longings, they're the most fundamental aspects of what we want. That's guidance. That's calling us in a particular direction. So what we want is our part of our guidance system. But I think in response to your specific question, I will never forget several years ago when I was in the corporate world. Again, I had been in the corporate world, I'd left, I'd gone back, and I really just never was happy there. And I knew that I was getting ready to leave again at some point, but I just wasn't. I hadn't planned it. I really wasn't in my mind specifically ready. And one morning I was actually exercising, which is kind of classic. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was exercising. I was really feeling just very good. My mind was quiet. I was feeling physically energized. And I was here in my home. I walked to my living room window I was doing some aerobic stuff in between songs. I looked out my window. I could see the city skyline the city where I worked at the time. And it was literally as if I was watching a gray cloud moving away from the buildings, and the sky cleared. And I heard this voice saying, now is the time to leave. Like, it was just crystal clear. It was one single thought that showed up in my mind. And I was 100% certain that was guidance. And it was telling me it was time to leave my corporate job. And that was such a stunning moment of clarity. I really, really appreciated it, because that's what I was waiting for, that clarity.
And did you act upon it?
I sure did. I think I literally went in that day, maybe the next day, and I gave my notice. And now I will admit that after I gave my notice, I had some, what did I do? I had some fear that I had to navigate through, but it was guidance. It was the right guidance at the right time, and I acted on it.
And so when you made that decision to hand in your notice and you went in the next day, there's also, so you just said there was an element of relief. There must have been that relief, but also that fear at the same time. How did you sort of balance that? How did you stick to the voice within that was telling you this was the right thing to do?
Well, that's, that really is the challenging part, right? But it's actually easier than we think if we start to understand how important that inner sense of rightness actually is. So in those moments that I was in fear, and I'm much better at this now than I was back then, but it comes down to, what are you going to trust? Which aspect, which voice are you going to trust? The voice that when you hear it makes you feel peaceful, or the voice that makes you feel afraid? That was one of the, we may have losing internet. Can you still hear me, Rich?
Yeah, if you could, you just answer, go from that question again, because I lost you on that bit. Can you hear me? Yeah, I've lost you. You're going very, very slow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
bear with me. It'll probably pick up again in a second. There you go. It's caught up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah. Yeah. If we go for that question again. So, how did you, so when you decided to hand your notice in, you're going to feel a moment of elation, a moment of freedom, and then straight away in comes the fear and the worry. How did you stick with that voice as it was telling you initially to move on and it was time? How did you remind yourself and stick strong with it?
It really is what you just said. The word remind is a huge piece of it. It's remember, it's first of all understanding that guidance comes through when we are at peace. Guidance doesn't come through when we're in fear. So whatever that particular moment in time was so crystal clear, and I was so at peace before the guidance came in, that I knew absolutely that it was guidance and I could trust it. So it's understanding how your own guidance speaks to you. And once you learn how to recognize it, then it really is a matter of reminding yourself. Like when the fear comes, is, breathing through it. I have other ways of navigating through fear, which is a subject for another time. But to really anchor into that moment, remember, recall, remind yourself, no, that's guidance. That's my guidance. That's my guidance. And then the work becomes finding ways to soothe yourself, to feel more at peace, and listen again for guidance for next steps. So it's always this is what I mean by emotions or guidance. Fear is telling us that there's something that we're thinking about, there's some perspective we're holding that isn't true for us. If it was true, it would feel good. But because it feels fearful, that means there's something that we're thinking that isn't true when we have that strong negative emotion.
I think it was a very good point that you pointed out there, was because I was going to ask, how do you know when it's a guiding voice and when it's a voice that's telling you it's just a negative voice that's saying this isn't right for you? But I think that you just said there, it's whether it feels good or not.
Exactly. And everyone has their own definition of feels good. For me, it feels, I'll say spacious, like there's a spaciousness, a peacefulness about true guidance. And usually it comes when my mind is already still. It isn't just one of many thoughts that I'm having. That's happened several times to me where I'm not even thinking about something. My mind is totally clear. And then in comes just this one piece. And so that's one of the hallmarks of the way my guidance comes through. And I think others have experienced similar things. So part of the art of this is getting really curious about how does my guidance speak to me? How do I know it's guidance? When I was at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, they would always say to us, how do you know that you know? How do you know that you know? And that was what they were trying to get us to do, is to really get to attune ourselves to recognize, oh, this is how guidance feels. The other stuff is not guidance. This is how guidance feels. Now, the other stuff, like I said, emotions are a form of guidance, in that when we're feeling strong negative emotion, what it means is that we're focused in a way that doesn't serve us in some way. So the negative emotion is like a wake-up call saying, wait a minute, whatever you're thinking right now is not serving you or isn't true at some level. And so then the opportunity is to pause and shift and kind of do some inquiry around that. So it's guidance of a different kind. But the guidance that comes through in terms of a thought or a decision, a course of action, that guidance feels peaceful. It feels peaceful, or in some way.
So an interesting question was, if you meet someone who says they're a guide and you're feeling vulnerable and they're a guide, how do you know whether the guide's a real guide? Do you have an inner voice telling you whether that guide is able to help you or not? Like,
you mean an external guide, somebody outside of you?
Yeah, or whether someone's like, whether they're interested in helping you genuinely, or they're interested in getting something from you. I understand there's an exchange of everything in every type of life. But I mean, from a malignant sense, how do you know that that person's actually there to help you? Because they're dressed up as a guide, but actually it might feel as if, hang on a minute, this person hasn't got my best interests at heart.
Yeah. Well, you answered the question right there. It's that felt sense, right? It's that felt sense. Sometimes it isn't even that they don't have your best interest at heart, but they don't really know what's right for you. Like here's another great inner guidance story related to my TED Talk, which I know you've seen.
Yeah.
you know, a lot of the places in my journey where I would give my power away to experts was in the marketing end, because I didn't have any experience there. So I would look for help, you know, advice in how to market my work. And I remember one time, and I paid a lot of money for things that didn't work for me. This particular incident wasn't paid, but it was a colleague of mine who held himself out to be very knowledgeable about these things. And he told me that I should do a TED Talk. So I should do a TED Talk. And he was very, you know, firm about that. That's what I should do. And so in my unsure state, you know, I wasn't at peace during that conversation. I thought, okay, well, that's, you know, he knows what he's talking about. You know, that's a good idea. So I started doing some research into how that would even happen. And my inner sense was, no, it just didn't feel right to me. It just did not feel right to me. So I let it drop. I by that time I knew that that's my felt sense was something I should pay attention to. So I didn't pursue it. Well, about 2 years later, without any specific effort on my part, both one of my clients and one of my colleagues recommended me for a TED Talk. And then, so the organization reached out to me and invited me to submit a proposal. So that was a whole, you know, that just happened in this very organic way. And when I got the invitation to submit the proposal, I had an instant yes, like I had an inside of me. I could almost see myself on the stage. Like there was just this instant inner yes to that. It was very clear. And so I acted on that, obviously. And that process of listening to my guidance, you know, I really do believe that when I was first told that I should do a TED Talk, I wasn't ready. I didn't have enough confidence in my message to really go out there on stage and speak about it with conviction. I needed that extra time for that to develop within me. And then when I was ready, you know, the universe showed up with an opportunity for me to step forward. So that's what I'm talking about, is living from this more, you know, in tune place with ourselves and with the opportunities that are a match for us, and not having to push and strive so hard to make things happen, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And something that's popped into my mind there is what you've just said. Do you think that we all come to Earth with a blueprint of where we should be? And these, I have a theory of that when you have deja vu, it's like your way of telling yourself you are in the right place at the right time because this is where you were meant to be. I know a lot of people do have that thing. It was almost like a sense of I've been here before, or I've designed this to be here, and this is almost like a pinpoint. What's your take on blueprints before you come here? And there's a hall of records, and I always forget the name of it.
The Akashic.
Yeah, what are your takes on these things?
Ooh, wow, that's a big topic. Boy, how would I summarize that in a quick answer? In this moment, after having, believe me, Rich, this is the kind of thing that I have contemplated, reflected on, studied for many years, and you know, I'm still open to having my perspective changed. But how it seems to me is that we do come in with general intentions around what we're here to, how we're going to expand, and in what ways are we going to expand. I wouldn't necessarily use the word blueprint, but I think there are areas of focus that we come into this lifetime knowing that we're going to develop and cultivate and grow through. So I think that's what we come in with. But the specifics are really up to us. Like as we get here, as we live our lives, and as we gain clarity, and you know, we're in the mix of this universe of all kinds of vibrations. We're going to be swept along the wave of those themes that I say our large self selected, you know, that we selected for ourselves before we came in. But the specifics are up to us to play with and create, and but we will learn through them. We will grow through them for sure.
Yeah,
For example, I really believe that one of my themes coming into this life was self-trust. Like I set myself up to cultivate a far deeper sense of self-trust than I had known. So a lot of my growth has been in that area. I've had so much self-doubt in my life. And it's so clear that that it really has diminished and hampered me. So developing self-trust has been this, this really big theme in my life.
So it's kind of like an internal journey in an external world. And
Yeah. Beautiful.
um yeah, that's what it seems like to me, because I always thought that when people say that I read some books, I won't enter the names of these authors, but they talk about what heaven is like when you get there, and they give very specific details of what is here and what is there. And I'm like thinking, it sounds lovely, but it sounds like they're lovely. I mean, it doesn't
Yes,
make
it's
sense to me. Like, yeah, how could it be nirvana if it was, and heaven if it isn't my idea or your idea? I'd assume it'd all be different for
it would all
different.
be different. I
Yeah.
agree.
It's strange. Does your guidance tell you things as you get older that might have contradicted something that it told you when you were younger? So does it almost change as you change?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it does. Because things that are right for us at a certain stage in development are no longer needed at a later stage in development. Like, a simple example in the physical world. I don't know if in the UK you have training, like back in the day, people used training wheels when they're learning how to ride a bike. So you needed training wheels. That was something you needed. Well, once you learn how to ride a bike, you don't need training wheels. So it's similar with guidance. At each stage, we're being given the guidance that's appropriate for us at that stage of our self-awareness, our evolution, our development. But it may no longer be relevant as we move forward.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the word of guidance. So do you actually, a lot of people say they have a spirit guide and this could specifically say who they are. Is that something you've encountered, or is it more of a feeling with you?
I'm open to the possibility that what I'm getting as guidance is coming from what someone else would call a spirit guide. Certainly when I was at the Barbarian School of Healing, they encouraged us to get to know our spirit guides, our healing guides, and so forth. Again, that's all interpretation and perception. I really do believe that each one of us has what I call a large self. Abraham Hicks uses the words inner being. We all, you might say higher self, whatever that. There's a large non-physical aspect of who we are. And I believe that's where my guidance is coming from. It's my own large self, the non-physical part of me that's eternal and has the real big picture and knows exactly what I need and when. So I believe it's coming from my own large self. But again, that's my interpretation. I think what's perhaps just generally or true is that we have access to a higher level of knowing and intelligence than we typically do in our day-to-day thinking. So there's a shift in consciousness that we can make that gives us access to deep intuitive knowing, guidance that isn't specifically gleaned from just our day-to-day analysis. So I think we all have access to this infinite intelligence. And whether you call it a spirit guide or whether you call it your large self or whether you call it angels or, and any of those things, I think they're all aspects of this, they're all just different ways of defining and categorizing elements of infinite intelligence.
And do you see, yeah, yours is more of a sort of like an in-guided voice. A lot of people say that they actually see someone, they have them there with them. Um, do you think that, because there's a theory, and I don't know how true this is, that we only use a certain percentage of our brain, our physical brain.
Yeah.
Is there parts of us that you believe that might have been locked off over the last few thousand years that we're not using, that may be awakening again as people become more conscious, if they are indeed becoming more conscious?
I do believe that. I'm certainly not a expert or anything close to it on the physical brain, but I certainly do believe that that there is an awakening happening. There is an expansion in human consciousness occurring right now, and more of us are accessing, opening up um, to these higher levels of consciousness where different kinds of information are available. So
I
yes,
do.
I think that would translate into then, because it has to be translated into something that we can understand in our physical bodies. I think that means that the brain itself is perhaps being rewired, is opening up its own capabilities in
And
that.
how do you think that goes into the relationship with our own awareness and the awareness of the earth, like ley lines and things like that, with there's meant to be the energy grid of the earth? Is there a connection there? Do you have sort of your thoughts on that?
I think the connection just is our ability to perceive subtle energies. So as that ability um, is uh, is strengthened in us, either through conscious cultivation or just through kind of a natural evolution. I think that opens us to receive both, to perceive both a guidance that's specific to us and our lives, but also to perceive energy at other levels that's related to Mother Earth or whomever. So I think they are related. It doesn't necessarily mean that once you start receiving inner guidance more clearly that you're suddenly going to also perceive energy more clearly. But I think there is a relationship. And it's all about this idea of um, expanded consciousness, expanded awareness, and the ability to perceive subtler and subtler levels of existence.
And so what are the changes that you've maybe seen over the last, say, 20 years in people's consciousness on a general level? What are your sort of your views on it, and what have you seen change, and how's your perception of it?
Well, in my personal experience, when I attended the Barbara Brennan School of Healing in the 1990s, and back then, even though things were much more open than they had been like in the 1950s, for sure, there was still a lot, in my experience, a lot of uh, derision. Like the stuff I was learning was woo woo, and people really were not embracing even holistic healing, much less things like spirit guides. So you had to go to these secret bookstores and find books on it, and I really felt like I was part of a very small group of people. I probably wasn't, but that's how it seemed to me. That there weren't that many of us who were open to understanding the universe in these terms, and I felt in many ways I had to hide what I was learning. Now, I mean, just in this past 20 years or so, like things have opened up tremendously. I mean, now we can talk about things like this, and it's not everyone will agree with it, but people are way more receptive to it, And of course, the number of schools and teachers and ways to develop these higher sense perceptions, they abound now. That there are just so many avenues through which we can learn these things, study them, practice them. So I just see it, just the general acceptance having really increased substantially, and also the avenues through which we can learn and grow.
I like the word that you use, receptive, there. I love language, and I love the way these words pop into the reception. The receptive of something is all about basically, obviously, receiving the signals and being able to receive the signals. So just to be receptive of it means that you're able to take it in, or you're willing to take it in. And I think that you said maybe there was always an ability, but not a willingness. And the more willing you are, the more ability you have. Would that make sense?
Perfect sense. That's perfectly stated. I will often say to people that willingness is a key to transformation, and it's so much more powerful than willpower. We, rather than trying to force ourselves through something, our willingness, it's a gentle, it's a receptivity. It's an openness, and in that openness we can gather so much more in a more relaxed way.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think even just having something like Success 4, the work that you're doing, there is so much more available, and people are fine tuning into this. And I think we're in a world now that the whole ego based business way of doing things, the doing things on your own and taking things for yourself, is not working anymore. It's rubbing people up the wrong way. And I think we're at a very interesting time when actually giving and working together and sharing and giving before you receive is actually working out longer than benefits. I think humanity is growing up. And when you get older, you become a lot more patient and less reptilian mind jumping on things. And I think
Exactly. Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
way we're going. We're opening up, we're slowing down, we're becoming more comfortable with ourselves.
We absolutely are. And I love what you said. The piece about the giving and receiving, that was, as you and I've talked before, that was partly what was always rubbing me the wrong way when I took these marketing courses. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not judging anything. Everyone's at their own stage of development, and everyone was doing what they believed to be theirs to do at the time. My inner guidance, though, was telling me that those courses that were trying to tell me how to get clients, because it was all about serving me, making them me getting people so I could get paid, right? It was all about me getting something. And that just never felt right to me. The focus needed to be on what I'm giving. And so I'm right with you on that. I think that was my inner guidance, you know, which is part of and my inner guidance, of course, is the other piece, that our inner guidance isn't just singular to us. It's connected. It comes from infinite intelligence. So it's connected to the whole. So I think we're guided in ways that serve not just us individually, but serve the evolution of humanity as well. So I felt guided not to keep participating or even try to participate in the system that was all about doing things to get a client. So my whole journey has been about shifting that, coming into this other paradigm of trusting that my job isn't to get clients. My job is to serve clients. And as I developed that trust in my own inner guidance, the universe itself orchestrates clients coming to me, just like the TED Talk came to me. So my job is to trust that this is an abundant universe. My job is to make sure that what I'm offering is of value, and, to serve my clients the best way that I can. My job isn't to get clients.
Yeah, the word "get" clients sounds very aggressive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
And exactly.
I think that's like why I was drawn to your TED Talk, but because it spoke to me in this person's actually is honest, and you weren't trying to get anything. You were trying to communicate an understanding of a lot of people in that room feeling the same. Probably everyone in
Yes.
the room feeling the same. And you were communicating an understanding. You were giving an understanding and a connection. Therefore, from that, you do receive, but you were
Absolutely.
giving
Absolutely.
something. You weren't saying, I've got this information and this is how you do something. You were saying, this is my experience.
Yeah, and here's what I've learned, and it's helped me, it's helped other people, and I hope it helps you for sure. And yes, I mean, obviously I am in business. I do love working with clients. I love for clients to come to work with me. That's all true. It's just the difference in the understanding how things really work. Like you said, we're growing up. We're realizing that we don't we it's really because it's fear, right? If we think we have to get clients, that means some part of us is afraid that we won't. Some part of us is afraid that there's not enough. So that's really the fundamental shift, is that shift from fear to trust. When we don't fear that something won't happen unless I make it happen, when we trust that we're we're an integral part of this incredible, intelligent, abundant universe, then our job just becomes relaxing and bringing out the truth of who we are, our talents, our passions, all of that. We bring that out, and that becomes part of the mix. And naturally, the giving and receiving, we receive back.
Yeah, and I believe we're all connected as one human being on different levels. So I agree. I believe if you take £5 out of my pocket and put it in yours, we're wearing the same pair of trousers. It don't matter. It just goes in the other pocket. And I
Right.
agree. I agree. Just metaphorically. I mean, obviously, we all need to make money to sustain to have a lifestyle, but you don't need to have this big flamboyant lifestyle. And we were speaking today about time being your most valuable asset, because you pay people to do things so you have more time to do other things. But most of the time, people are spent paying others to do stuff to give them free time, and then using that free time to get money to do other things. And it's just an exchange of time. And I believe the more you slow down and realize you don't need them to clutter your life and declutter your life, the more time you actually have available to have a think. And that's why I believe, like, I don't watch TV, I don't watch the news, and not because of it just winds me up, and I don't have the time to spare to be wound up like that. I love conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I've realized I like them because I find them escapism to me, because there's more to this world than there seems, and I think we're all understanding that. So to know, like, your inner guidance, how has that sort of served you in the last, say, maybe year or so, as you've been moving on in your business?
Um, well, let me think. Gosh, I mean, there's so many. Now it's such a part of my life. I feel like it's the only way to live my life. So I can't. Is there a particular example I can offer?
How about changing your web? Because I know you've changed your website and it's launched and it's brand new and it's all changed. What guided you to make those changes?
Yeah, that was, again, that came through my form of, one of my forms of guidance that I use is journaling. So I will have a conversation with my large self. I'll ask a question, I'll pause, I'll get quiet, and when I pick the pen back up again, I'm metaphorically giving the pen to my large self. So that's one of the ways I cultivate my own guidance, is by practicing. That's such an important part of the message here too, is that, like anything else, receiving guidance is in some sense a skill that we can practice and get better at, starting with willingness, right? Starting with willingness, but then, bringing in this practice. So I practice receiving guidance. And yeah, that came through my journaling, that it was time to let go of my business has been named Solid Ground, Transformational Life Coaching. And the guidance came through that that's no longer really who I am. I'm not really a coach. I'm a teacher. I'm a guide for sure. I'm a mentor, and that I needed to step out from behind Solid Ground. And it was time to say, I'm Suzanne Eder, and here's what I have to offer the world. So that all came through my journaling. That came through my journaling. But yes, it was definitely a form of guidance.
It's really good to see, and I can't wait to be working with you more on these things that we're doing together. And it's absolutely been fantastic for me to connect with you. I've connected with so many people over the last year and a half just through podcasts, and me and Suzanne have never met. She's in completely different part of the world to me, and it amazes me how you can have that connection and that work together. And we have a very, very similar way of looking at things. That's why we've got Susan and other people like that and our trusted coaches, because trust is the bravest thing I think you can do in the world. And even when it's broken, to trust again, you just have to get twice as brave. And I think people like Suzanne are making it easier to trust in people.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you, Rich. I love our connection. I just see, isn't it great how that, the people who resonate similarly find each other, and so that we can expand from that place, and it's really, really wonderful.
So, Suzanne, anyone who's even listened to these 4 podcasts, what would you like them to take away from them overall? Sort of the feeling of listening to their inner guidance voice, listening to their soul, and understanding that there is a guidance and they aren't on their own. What feeling would you I think what I'm trying to say is that everyone has this feeling that they're trying to help someone with. They're trying to actually maybe help within themselves, but help others. What would you like people to take away from 4 podcasts?
Well, certainly, at the highest level, I would love people to have understood more deeply, perhaps, how important self-love truly is and what it really is. It isn't just about self-care. It isn't just about, doing wonderful things for ourselves, but it certainly includes that. It's this deeper, again, recognizing, honoring, and celebrating the deepest truth of who we are. So it's really understanding that's important. We tend to put ourselves and our inner thoughts and dreams and guidance, somewhere on a to-do list, but we don't tend to make that the central commitment in our lives. And I would love for more people to understand that the more they commit to themselves, to knowing who they are, to listening to themselves, honoring what they hear, loving themselves forward, the more they make that an intention and a commitment, the more able they are to be generous, to serve others, to be in this world in a really fulfilling way. It isn't selfish at all. It's just the opposite of selfish. It's very generous. I would love for people to get to feel more deeply the importance of self-love, not just for themselves, but for the world that we're living in. And in particular with this inner guidance piece, I just think I would love for people to if there's an inner voice they've been ignoring, perhaps this will be the catalyst for them to say, no, wait, that is my guidance. I'm going to honor it. But I also want to emphasize this message that inner guidance can be cultivated. We can practice hearing it, and it's worth it. It is so worth it.
So, Suzanne, how can people contact you and connect with you? Connect with you and work with you and speak to you in person.
The best way would be to go to my website, which is SuzanneEder.com. My name, SuzanneEder.com. And of course, there's a contact form there. You can email me and we can set up a time. I'm in the United States. I do sessions with Skype all the time if you're not in the United States. So I can do mentoring by phone, by Skype, in person, of course. So yeah, my website's the best place to go, I think. And I have lots of stuff there that's for free. A lot of my writing and audio classes and so forth, so they can get a chance to hear more about, my philosophy and how I work with people.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. But it's been a fantastic podcast, and I've loved working with you on our previous podcast as well. And if you are ever in the UK, we'd love to do some work with you. Come and do one of our events, speak at one of our events. So, guys, go over to, is it SuzanneEder.com?
SuzanneEder.com, yes.
.com, and check out Suzanne's work. Connect with her on Facebook, obviously on Twitter, and make sure you check out her TED Talk on YouTube, which is The Dark Side of Self-Improvement. That's incredible, and I'd hope to see you doing another TED Talk soon, and I'd love to come and meet you at some point. So thank you for your time, and thank you for this incredible series, and let's do something again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Richard. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.